From National Wrestling Hall of Fame, Dan Gable Museum, I'm Jeff Bradley. Quick takes off the mat. Guest today, Mark Schwab. Now, I'm not going to call him Mark the rest of the interview. I'm going to call him the Duke. And he's a four-time state champion out of Osage, Iowa. He's a Green Devil and a two-time All-American at UNI. Duker, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm good, Jeff.
You good? So, and I know we've talked about this before, but I'd like you to get it out there for everybody else. When did you kind of formulate the idea that you wanted to be a four-time state champ in the state of Iowa?
Well, I know exactly when it was. It was in sixth grade, watching Iowa Public Television, and it was Jeff Kerber. In fact, I think Klingman just interviewed Kerber, and I put a little post by it that a lot of people helped me along the way, but he was the guy when I watched him that night in sixth grade, and he went 126-0 at the weight class 126, and I've only been hit like this a few times in my life, but that was one of them when just something happened within, and that was when I made up my mind. At least that was going to be the goal, and Kerber was the spark behind that.
I was talking to John Smith before the UNI Oklahoma State duel, and he said he was on an Espoir team with you, and I said, well, tell me a little something about the Duke, and this is what he told me. And he says, he goes, when I was watching Schwab roll around with some other guys, and John Smith goes, I'm not so sure I ought to be on this team. Now, I think he's saying that kind of half in jest. He was being pretty humble, but I want to get your take on that comment and also that Espoir team that you
I think he's probably joking around on that. He's being pretty humble. That team, I will tell you about that, though. I was a senior in high school, and it was 17 through 20-year-old. That was and it was World Championships that happened to be in Colorado Springs. And it was a legit World Championship. There was 36 countries there. And I know they've had some other different age-level World Championships through the years that, 5, 6, 10 countries. This was the real deal.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe Kadartsev might have been there. But that was the year, that was the only year that the National Open was held out east. And they had the Espoir Nationals there, and then they had the National Open as well. And Jimmy Martin from Penn State won the National Open. He won it at the senior level, and he won it at the junior world level. And I didn't go, so I had to go through a mini tournament, and I had to make scratch weight, and I had to wrestle 3 different people, 2 out of 3, just to get to Jimmy Martin. And it actually worked in my favor because I had made weight several times. I had adjusted, and Martin just got out there a couple of days prior. And it went well for me. I think like 15-3 and 10-1. And he won the senior level open that year. So he was the real deal, But John Smith was on that team.
Yeah.
And I tried to make a world team the summer before in New York. I didn't make it. I got beat by a guy named Corey Bays. But John Smith did, and he made the world team in both freestyle and Greco. So he had already made world teams, and he had already had his freshman year in college when that world championships out there went around. And he beat the Russian, but he lost to the Korean. So he ended up 3rd place. But he made a world team in Greco as well. I mean, that's where that guy's at.
Yeah, incredible. So arguably back, when you were competing international, Tbilisi was, you very easily the toughest tournament, tougher than really the World Championships with all the Russians there. Can you talk a little bit about your Tbilisi experience and any teammates you want to, comment on those guys?
Yeah, it was a great experience, and I had a pretty good tournament. I won 5 matches in that tournament. And I lost to the world champion, who was the North Korean. And I also lost to Vladimir Tuguzov, who I had wrestled 3 different times and lost to him every time. But Taguzov ended up being Olympic silver medalist and a world silver and bronze medalist. So I went 5-2 in that tournament, and those are the two guys I lost to. And I had a good tournament. I mean, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And the guys I ran around with on that trip was Barry Davis and Jim Jordan. Well, who would have known that Jordan would have been a,
congressman.
Yeah, he was on that trip, and Kenny Monday was on that trip, and he was just breaking in then. And the Shear brothers were there, and one of them was in the finals. Dave Schultz was there and won. In fact, I think it was like 0-0, and then Schultz got on top and put some torture move together, man. And I remember the Russian was a world champion, and a guy he had gone back and forth with, and Schultz pinned him. And the guy's nose was all, but he could barely get up off the mat. I'm not kidding you. And they started chanting. They go, Schultz, Schultz. They started chanting that. They just wanted to see good wrestling, But those were some of the guys that were on that trip, and I'm just a redshirt freshman in college. I was just happy to be there, but I learned a lot. I mean, going on trips like that they're irreplaceable, man.
So you competed a long time. You also coached a long time. Who are a couple guys, maybe collegiately and internationally, that you would put right up towards the top of your list for best wrestler you've ever seen?
Well, one guy, and I'm not going with him just because he's a friend, but I'm putting Tim Krieger, as far as collegiately in there. That guy had hair on his chest when he was 10 years old, and that's the truth, man. I mean, he really did. That guy was just so calm, cool, composed, and he just was so good, and he always was so good. And the guy was 105-3 for his college career, and all 3 losses were in the national tournament. 2 of them his freshman year. One to a guy named Joey McKenna, I believe, or something. And then his 2 other losses was to the guy from North Carolina State, who beat him in the wrestlebacks, and then ended up beating Krieger 2 years later, I believe, in the NCAA tournament names. So he was the only wrestler I know at that point who went into the NCAA tournament undefeated and seeded number 1 4 years in a row. And 105-3, that's not a lot of matches, but towards later on in Krieger's career, he didn't need to wrestle as much, and you saw it. He wrestled 20 matches a year because they knew that, hey man, he doesn't need all this. He don't want all this. But when it's time to win, he can put an arm behind his back and win. Right. And he did.
What about international?
John Smith for sure.
Yeah.
John Smith and Arsen Fedzayev. My claim to fame with Fedzayev is he wiped some sweat off my back in a sauna at one of our duo meets. He wiped some sweat off my back. But yeah, Fedzayev, man. Yeah. I mean, that guy was so good.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about coaching at Minnesota. You went up there, Jay Robinson hired you. I remember Minnesota always being a really good team and maybe not quite peaking at the right time. And then, with you and Marty and Jay, boy, you guys caught some lightning in a bottle up there. Just talk about some of those teams, some of those guys. Man, they were tough. 10 All-Americans that one year, and then Jay Rob.
Well, I'll say the same thing I've always said. And there were lots of pieces of the puzzle. I mean, it takes a lot of people to make things happen. It's not just the people you named. I mean, there's so many people who are carrying, that were a piece of the puzzle. But I think the biggest thing, and I keep going back to it, was the guys on the team. We had great leaders on our team. And we had guys who would call other guys out, and we had guys who were doing the right things, and some of the other younger guys coming in they wanted to do those things as well.
Right.
And that's really what happened for quite a while. We got I think it's this. I think we had the right guys in the right place at the right time. We had the right coaching chemistry, and for a period of time there, I look at it like we were we weren't a program, we were a movement. We got everybody on the same page, pulling on the rope at the same time for several years, and it was a great time of my life, man. And the credit's got to go to J-Rob, because he's the guy who's at the top, and Jay knows how to put things together. He knows how to get the right people, and we just had the right chemistry. You know what I mean? We just had a collection of things that don't line up very many times in life like they did there. And but most of the credit, man, these guys on the team, they took the leadership. Yeah. And there were so many things that never even reached the coaches. We had the kind of guys that they were snuffing things out, Yeah. So what a great time. And Jay's a great, hey, he's the guy who orchestrated things, man,
They're physical, they were in shape, man, and talented, hard-nosed. It must have been just, I don't want to say a joy, but it must have been just about a joy to coach them guys.
It was. We, and I think, most of us, we liked each other too, so we had fun with it. I mean, we really enjoyed each other's company, and like I said, they were coachable. That's one thing I've continued to say too, is those guys were coachable. They weren't guys who were going to be like, well, you never did anything. I mean, they weren't like that at all. These guys just wanted to learn and get better. Yeah. And they could sniff out whether you knew what you were talking about or not. Those guys got it. But they were willing, they were coachable, and they were willing to work for us. They were willing to get tired. And they'd go there in the deep water, and that's what you have to do, and they'd let us take them there. And then they would learn to function there, so you get the right guys together at the right time with the right coaches doing the right things with the right, good things are going to happen. And they did for quite a while.
Jim Miller here with the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum. Today and in future interviews, we'd like to include something our interviewers are passionate about besides wrestling. And today we'll get to see something Mark Schwab has loved to do for many, many years. He has taught himself to play the guitar and spends time daily working on this craft. And like he said, who doesn't love music? Today, Mark's going to lay down some blues for us. Thanks, Mark, for sharing.